Mabuhay, I'm Saskia Delane. I'm the ambassador of the Netherlands to the Philippines, and it is my pleasure to welcome you virtually to the 6th International Manila Dialogue. And I would like to congratulate the Interagency Council Against Trafficking, IACA, led by Undersecretary Emmeline Aguipal-Villar of the Department of Justice. This year is a bit different from the past dialogues due to the COVID-19 pandemic. However, the Philippines has remained steadfast in its fight against human trafficking. And today, we recognize the hard work of those involved, and we pay tribute to the victims and to the survivors. Every year, the Manila Dialogue provides space for exchange of experiences and best practices, and for cooperation among Philippine government agencies, NGOs, private sector actors, and the international community. Human trafficking knows no boundaries, and it's plaguing and preying on the most vulnerable, women and children. Prevention, detection, and prosecution of human trafficking bears as much importance as addressing its root causes. The Netherlands is your partner in fighting human trafficking, especially online sexual exploitation of children. We have different mechanisms in our country to tackle aspects of human trafficking, and one of those is the National Rapporteur on Trafficking in Human Beings and Sexual Violence Against Children, Mr. Herman Bolhaar. To give us a background on what his office does and how the Netherlands plays a role in combating human trafficking, it is my very pleasure to introduce to you Mr. Bolhaar.
Thank you very much for organizing the Manila Dialogue, and in particular the government of the Philippines for inviting me today to speak here. My name is Herman Bolhaar. I am the independent National Rapporteur on Human Trafficking and Sexual Violence Against Children in the Netherlands. Thanks to digital technology, it's possible to speak together today at the 6th Manila Dialogue, despite the limitations that the COVID-19 virus is causing at the moment. Trafficking in human beings is a complex phenomenon, and possibly becoming more complex every day. That is why no organization or expert can solve it on its own. To improve our strategies to combat it, it's fundamental to share our knowledge and experiences, to analyze our work and seek for improvements together. I would like to underline the importance of shared learning experiences, the ability to look critically to what we do, and its impact and the power to adjust our strategy where needed. The Manila Dialogue is contributing to this shared learning, even though circumstances make it more difficult to meet in person. It's especially during these trying times that we simply cannot afford to let a topic like trafficking in human beings slip through our fingers. The full impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on trafficking in human beings is not yet clear to us. But what we do know is that during these times of crisis, persons who were already vulnerable before are becoming even more vulnerable. Support and care systems are becoming less accessible. Identification of suspected victims might be limited. Perpetrators might find ways to operate out of sight authorities. To give you an example, during the onset of the pandemic, schools in the Netherlands closed down and concerns arose on school children that went missing. School teachers were not able to get in contact with thousands of children who stayed at home, especially children from families that were already vulnerable before the crisis. Dutch municipalities and schools worked together to track these children down, and in most cases they were able to do so in the end, but concerns on what happened to these children in the meantime remain. On the other hand, other cases of possible exploitation became more visible. For example, labor migrants who were already working in the Netherlands in worrisome circumstances before the COVID crisis and showed to be very vulnerable to be infected by the virus due to their working and living conditions. The number of persons at risk of becoming a victim of exploitation is growing. The EU reports that criminals have seized the opportunity during the pandemic to generate significant profits and intensify their criminal activities. They've changed their operating methods and are increasingly advertising victims on the internet or exploiting them in private facilities. This also means that we are losing insight on these types of exploitation. The technology component can no longer be seen as just a single factor when we talk about trafficking in human beings. Technology has become an integrated part of it. It facilitates perpetrators who want to get in touch with potential victims, and moreover, it allows for a gigantic scale-up of the exploitation business models. Think for example about webcam sex and the opportunity to facilitate demands of thousands of clients worldwide at the same time. Increasing unemployment and loss of income makes people more vulnerable to become a victim of exploitation. That's clear. Criminal organizations intending to make use of this vulnerability as part of their business model see their opportunities grow. The first example I'm thinking of is about the growing group of people that depends on unsafe, undignified and underpaid jobs, fully at the disposal of criminals. In the Netherlands and in the rest of Europe, COVID pandemic showed us what we already know. What we already know, that our economies rely for a great extent on the work that's being done by many in circumstances that we can simply not allow to exist. Besides the traditional fields of exploitation, traditional fields, for example prostitution, begging and theft, textile and agricultural sectors, sectors such as construction, tourism, catering, nursing and domestic services are increasingly affected by human trafficking. Cases of migrant workers working in terrible circumstances popped up in the media. We can no longer ignore the weak positions of people who come to our countries to work but are very often taken advantage of by employers who use their dependency as a business model. The question is, how do authorities, but also companies themselves, respond to this? How do we use these observations to improve our policies and interventions? Well, that is really a question for all of us. Do we see the whole picture of the problem? Do we want to see the full scale of the problem? Do we ask the right questions? Do we collect data, collect concrete cases and learn from analyzing them? Human trafficking is happening largely out of sight. We have to know more about it and how it's changing with the moment. Of course, we have to know more about the perpetrators, more about the way they operate, the role of technology, about the way they earn their money, what banking systems they use, where the money goes. Without perpetrators, there will be no victims. We have to get a better understanding of what's going on and use this knowledge to stop the perpetrators. Break down the gigantic business models behind human trafficking. These questions cannot be addressed by nations individually. International cooperation, sharing of knowledge, and joint research between is crucial in this. The collaborative work that's being done here in the Philippines with the foreign embassies is a very good example of it. The best thing we can do for victims is to prevent they even become a victim. Who are these victims? What makes them vulnerable? We do know that in the Netherlands, a very large percentage of all victims are children or youngsters, especially when we talk about sexual exploitation and criminal exploitation. I guess this will be similar in the situation in the Philippines. We need to ask ourselves, do we know enough about how they end up in a situation of horrible exploitation? We know that technology is an important facilitator for perpetrators, but it can also help to those who try to combat, to help prevent victimhood, by providing information, creating awareness, and by directing victims to the right services. As we know that the online world has become an integrated part of the work of perpetrators and the dynamics between them and the victims, we also have to make sure that digital technologies are becoming an integrated part of our strategies as well, both on the policy level and during operations. Again, learning from each other and sharing positive experiences with investigation methods are fundamental to to jointly get to another level in our strategies. Thank you very much for this opportunity once more, and I hope today will be fruitful explorations of ideas and solutions. I wish you a lot of success. Thank you.